Love you, big guy.
Hello, naturalist. Austin here. Hope you're doing well. You know, lately, social behavior has not been a very popular idea. As we know all too well, it has come with significant cost. But it got me thinking about the rest of the animal kingdom and how some of the animals that exhibit social behavior have become some of the most dominant upon the earth. One of my favorites is the honeybee. So I thought we'd take a tour of a honeybee hive today and see how social behavior and so many other behaviors that the honeybee exhibits has made it one of the most impressive animals upon the earth. So here we are at the beehive, and you can see a lot of worker bees there coming in, bringing in nectar, bringing in pollen. They've been out foraging and they're bringing back the materials that the hive needs in order to have a successful spring season. You notice the beehive is constructed of fancy, nice boxes. Honeybees have lent themselves well to domestication for several thousand years, and so beekeepers often keep them in these boxes. In the wild, they would just live inside the hole of a tree, for example, but here we have bee boxes, and the one at the bottom, you'll notice, is quite larger than the ones on the top. So the bottom box is used for the queen to lay eggs and for larvae to develop into adult worker bees. Beekeepers will often put a screen on top of that large lower box, and that'll keep the queen from going up into the other boxes. The other boxes are utilized for honey production, so bees will bring in the nectar and turn it into honey, and that way, when you go to harvest your honey, you know that you're not getting any of the larvae or the eggs because they've been kept in the lower boxes. Many people have asked me about the color of my beehives, and we have a nice little green color and a pink color, and the reasons for that is because I'm a worker bee myself, and the hive I live in has a queen and she likes those colors. So that's the reason that my beehive looks this way. So what do you say we take a little tour of the inside of this beehive? To do this, I'm going to first start by smoking the bees. Smoke will help to disrupt some of the alarm signals that the bees will put out. So much of the communication of honeybees is through smells, and they emit these smells that say to the others, hey, sting the dude in the big white bee suit. And so if I can put smoke in the midst of those smells, it disrupts the transmission of it, making it a little bit safer for me to enter the beehive. It can also cause the bees to switch their focus from protecting their hive to drinking up as much honey as possible in the event that there is actually a forest fire and they might have to leave the hive. So this makes it a little bit safer for me to move into the hive, and I need all the help that I can get. So typically we want to give it a couple of minutes for the smoke to make its way in there and have its effect, and then we'll pop the top on this hive and see what the girls are up to. Little cockroach there. They sometimes hang out in the cracks of the hive. Take this little inner cover off. And so you can see that the hive or the boxes are full of frames. Put about 10 frames in every single box, and I've put my son actually has put honeycomb foundation in here. You can see the cells there with all the worker bees on there, but this is just the beginnings. It's the foundation of the honeycomb. So little hexagonal shapes that are offset just a little bit because that increases their engineering strength, and then they'll start to draw these out using beeswax. Beeswax that they're produced from their abdomen, and they're going to bring these honeycomb cells out. They're going to be oriented upward about 13 degrees, so the stuff they put in them does not fall out. But this is a frame that's just getting some of the initial treatment that it needs to begin being drawn out. Let's see if we can find one that is a little farther along. Gonna move slow here, try to keep the girls satisfied. All right. Good morning, girls. All right, so breaking the ends off here. So they sometimes glue this together with heavy stuff, heavier and thicker than honeycomb. This is known as propolis, this glue, and they collect it from other plant parts besides the flowers of plants. They get these from the buds of trees, sometimes the wounds of trees. They make this thick substance that they glue various parts of their hive together. So I break that loose. Now I'm moving into a nice frame of, looks like a good bit of nectar and honey. Make sure I don't see the queen, so I'm not too worried about hurting her. I don't see her here, but we do see a nice outlay of honey. I was kind of taking an outside frame on, so there's honey there. And looks like I've even got some eggs and larvae down in here. We'll try to take a close-up look. These are all worker bees. Getting busy this morning. Let's see what else I can find. I'll put this over here. Another nice frame. That's honey there. Honey's usually stored to the outskirts of the hive, at least during the spring months and summer months. And it's going to be the source of wintertime food, and they're making a good bit of it here. Oh, that's getting good and heavy. I like that. That means we're putting on some honey. So here we are down in the lower chambers of the existence of the honeybees, and I've got a nice full hive. Seeing all the things I want to see here. I'm going to pull one of these up and see if we can see some of the contents that we want to see. This propolis right here, this glue stuff, pretty impressive for a natural product. Definitely glues things together. Normally when I'm working a beehive, I would start from the outside because the queen is usually not out there. That's where the honey is usually being stored, and the queen's in here where she's laying eggs. And I like to make a little space to the outside and move the frames this way, so I'm not worried about harming my queen, but I'm going to try to be lucky this morning and just start pulling from the middle. I'll do it nice and easy. Slow and steady. Ooh, look at here. We got a frame full of pupated bees. Wow, all those cups are capped off, and they are full of bees about to emerge as adults. All right, so here we are with a close-up of the girls doing their work. So it's neat here because you can see, if you look closely, those open cells there, little white curly things. They almost look like maggots up in the middle of those little pieces of honeycomb. Those are larval honeybees. So they are being cared for by all these worker bees that are bringing them the honey and well, especially the pollen that they need in order to grow and become adult worker bees. These bees do a lot like butterflies. There is an egg, there is a larva, there is a pupa, and then there is an adult. So it's something called complete metamorphosis. Has been a very successful way of doing business for many of the insects, and these bees are within that realm. So one of the things you notice there to the left is a number of honeycombs that are full of a glistening substance. That is actually nectar. So the bees go out to the flowers and they will collect nectar. They'll bring it back, and they slowly dehydrate it. They move air around throughout the hive using their wings, and they take the moisture out of the nectar, and it turns into what you and I call honey. And when it's reached that point, they will cap it off, just like you would put the lid on your honey jar to preserve it, and then they'll store it until they need it. This is a wintertime sustenance, so many of your bees don't really carry on. Bees, ants, and wasps, they sort of slow down in the wintertime, but if those that don't, those that want to live through the winter, have to have some food to eat, and in this case, for honeybees, they're going to take the honey. So anytime you're a beekeeper, you're always kind of curious about this and thinking about it, because you don't want to take more honey for yourself than the bees will need for their wintertime food supply. So here's a frame of bees where the honey is a little farther along, a little more dehydrated than the rest of it. And you can see the little reaction of the bees after I've smoked them. They're all kind of moving in and drinking that nectar, just in case there may be a fire approaching their way and they would have to vacate the premises. But luckily that's not the case. But you can see the glistening honey and some of the cells starting to kind of close in. They're going to cap that off and keep it fresh. Got to store that up for the wintertime so that they can persist throughout the cold months. So we mentioned that bees are social insects, and this means usually three different things when entomologists are talking about social insects. For one thing, they have cooperative brood care. So all these little tiny white larvae that we're seeing, they are cared for by many different adult bees, all bringing in the food that they need, the pollen that they need in order to grow and to mature. And then these insects also have an overlapping of generations. So some of the worker bees that you see here were probably born just a few days ago, and others may have been born a week or two ago. But there's an overlap of generations inside the beehive. The third aspect of social insects is that they have a division of labor, in the sense that there are different types of bees doing different things. For example, the queen, she just goes around all day and lays eggs. In the spring and summer, this can be 2,000 eggs a day that she's laying. The worker bees that we see here, they're responsible for going out and fetching the nectar, fetching the pollen, fetching other materials that the offspring will need in order to survive. And then there are drone bees. Those are the male bees. All the workers are females, the drones are males, and the male bees are responsible for mainly mating with queens. Note too that worker bees have different jobs that they do. Largely this is based upon the age of the worker bee. So they do different tasks, different chores depending on their age. But they're all doing different things, dividing up the labor. Some are fetching pollen, some are fetching nectar, some are fetching water, some are tending the queen, some are tending the young, and some are building wax for honeycomb cells, all dividing up the labor. This kind of a social system has made these types of insects very, very dominant in any ecosystem in which they do exist. So the ants and the bees and the wasps in particular are famous for having social behavior, as are the termites. And whenever you find them in nature, you find lots of them, because teamwork makes dream work. So once in a while you see a bee kind of making some erratic buzzing movements, and it's funny, in the middle of the day especially, I'll see the bees wagging their tails and moving in straight lines, and then they kind of circle back to one side, and then they move up in a straight line again. They circle back to the other side. And while most of the communication that occurs inside a beehive is through the use of different smells, some of it is through what's called the wagtail dance. So pretend this is just a frame of bees we're looking at, and it's got a vertical orientation, so straight up and down, to the sun or wherever above, and the sky above. We're looking toward me in outer space. And the bees say they go out and they find this delicious, flower on a tulip tree. They come back and want to tell their friends about it. Well, what they'll do, and you'll see this when you break the hive open a lot of times, and this is why it fits into the tour. You'll see these bees zigzagging around. I meant to kind of stage this.
They'll zigzag on a straight run off to the side. Then they'll come back around the top. They'll zigzag and same off to the left here, or at least on my screen. They'll come around the circle. They'll zigzag back to the left again. It's almost like a figure eight, kind of a condensed figure eight. They keep doing this. Okay. Other bees will, I won't say they see it because it's pitch black dark inside a beehive almost, but they'll sense this. Okay. And this is telling them actually three different things. Number one, it's telling them that their friend has found something that they like, and they can smell the flower that their friend went to on the body of their friend. So it's telling them the quality of the nectar source that they went to. And the number of little waggles that occur on this straight run, okay, correlate pretty specifically to the distance away from the hive that the flower is that they want to go to. So more wags equals greater distance, less wags equals the flower is closer to the hive. Okay, so two things so far there, quality and distance, but it also gives you direction. So let's say the little bee is doing the track we said. It's going wagging this way, back around, wagging this way, back around. If that angle, if that straight run, they call it, even though they're wagging, if that straight run is 90 degrees from vertical, okay, if this straight run is 90 degrees from vertical orientation, that means that their friends need to go out to the front door of the beehive, okay? They need to find the sunshine and do some trigonometry and fly 90 degrees to the left of the sunshine. Just like we're 90 degrees to the left of vertical here, we fly 90 degrees to the left of the sunshine, the appropriate distance, we will find a flower of our choice. Isn't that crazy? And think about this. This happens despite the fact that there's trees in the way, there's skyscrapers, they're doing all kinds of trigonometry to figure out and still land in the same place. This is the waggle dance, and one of the reasons that honeybees are famous. Incidentally, some of the research more recently is showing that they're not always dependent on this. They can do without it. Sometimes they don't listen to the individuals that are trying to convey this information. Anyway, good stuff. That's the waggle dance. I know I haven't talked about honey. I thought about this. So the honey is their wintertime food source. We don't want to be greedy. If one box on our beehives are full, I'm going to leave that for the bees. If more than that's full, I'll probably take some of that off. And so you just pull these frames out. By then, they're all capped off. You take a hot knife, you plug it in, it heats up, you cut the caps off. Okay, it goes in this this machine here is a centrifuge, basically. It's got little places where I can put the frames. I turn the switch on, it spins around. Out comes the honey. I try to get the kids to save me some. Then we take this little barrel on the bottom, we take it inside the house, we let it settle, and then we, after a few days, we put it into the bottles. So, but again, honey is, bumblebees, yellow jackets, wasps, they don't live through the winter other than the queen, but honeybees live through the winter. So they need food to do that, and honey is their wintertime food source. So let's mention the life cycle of the bees. The queen that we saw earlier, she is going to be laying eggs, and these eggs will develop into larvae and then into pupae and then into adults. And so this is a form of what's called complete metamorphosis because it has a pupal stage. Those larvae stay in, they're not like caterpillars that are out walking around. So they stay in these little honeycomb cells, and they actually don't even defecate, they don't even go potty until they're adults. Imagine that. I would think they're ready to chug some Miralax when they pop out of those cells. But once they're adult worker bees, they're out doing different chores depending on their age. Now, if the queen lays an egg that's fertilized, it becomes a female. If the queen lays an egg that is unfertilized, it becomes a male. In the springtime, when the hive gets especially crowded, the queen will lay some eggs inside honeycomb cells that are much larger than others. They're larger than worker bee cells, and they're larger than the cells that drones' eggs would be laid in. And so these are queen cells. And when those eggs hatch, they're fed the same diet for the first few days as any other developing larva. But after that time, they continue to be fed a highly nutritious package of material called royal jelly. And this dictates that they will become queens. As they're developing, the queen that laid those eggs, the mother of those future queens, she is going to fly off into the sky, and she's going to take about 50% of the workers inside the beehive with her. They're going to find a place to literally hang out for just a bit, often a tree branch or something like that, not far from the hive. Scout bees will move out from that big swarm of bees, that big ball of bees, to find a new locale that they consider to be a nice abode. This is called a swarm of bees. When these bees have left a hive and they're moving through the air and trying to find a new home, this is a swarm of bees. And so this is sort of, it really is the way that beehive reproduces. It's almost an organism unto itself. Now meanwhile, back in the hive where the queen has laid eggs that are becoming future queens, there's usually several queen cells that are filled with developing queens. The first one to hatch out from its pupal case is going to go around. It's going to open up the cells of other bees, of other queen bees, and sting them to death. Because, you know, it's a monarchy. There can only be one queen. After that, she will fly up in the air and she'll mate with several male bees and acquire millions of sperm, enough to last her several years of her lifetime. She'll come back down to the hive and begin her business, laying eggs for the future success of her hive. Now, queen bees can sting over and over again. Their stingers do not have barbs upon the ends of the stinger. The worker bees, however, can only sting one time, and that's because they have a couple of barbs on the end of their stinger that stay inside the skin of the animal that they have stung. This means that the end of their abdomen is detached when they fly away from the animal that they've stung, but this tends to work out for the betterment of the whole because it also emits a pheromone, a smell that tells other bees to come and to sting the same area of the same person. It also leaves with it, in addition to the stinger, a little package of nerves and muscles and a poison sac that continues to pump poison into your body even after the bee has flown off. And this is why it's recommended that you get the stinger of a honeybee out of you sooner than later.
The rains are moving in, so I'm going to move back to my beehive. But I hope you've enjoyed our tour of the honeybee hive. I hope you've come to value and to appreciate the many intricacies of their lives and the social behaviors that make them so successful upon the earth. And I hope you're appreciative too of the ways in which they assist our livelihoods through pollination. And maybe you'll be inspired to promote pollinators like honeybees and other species in your own backyard. To find out how to do so, visit scwf.org. I'm wishing you a beautiful day.